Hello, Spider fans. Welcome
Hi.
to Han Talks First. I'm Han. This
And
is Chris.
yes, and I am excited.
We're all excited, and we have one more guest joining us today too. But before we jump into it, this is going to be riddled with spoilers. It'll be a giant web of spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, bye. We'll see you
Oh my
later.
god, I
Or
came up with...
unless you don't care, which I couldn't imagine why.
Right.
Stick around, whatever. But you can leave your thoughts in the comments. You can talk with us live, and then of course this is on the audio platform later. It's a Star Wars podcast, but every once in a while we talk about Marvel, and Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters of all time, and so we kind of have to talk about this. And we all really love the movie, and we're also
Yes.
joined by a friend and a guest who's been on the show a lot in the past, Zach. What's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
Pretty good. We just saw this low budget indie experimental art house film.
Up and coming actors,
Up and
huge
coming actors.
unknowns,
I mean, I just hope it makes it what does well in the
Oh.
circuit for all the festivals.
It's kind of a tough sell, but
Yeah.
it's worth it.
We'll see if they can make their money back.
Ambitious crossover, brave move. I don't know how the
Right.
fans
God.
reacted to it.
So, guys, this again is a spoiler review. The movie's only been
Spoilers.
out for like 4 days, so if you haven't seen it,
Go watch it.
go watch it.
Believe
come
me,
back.
it's worth it.
It is so worth it. And we're going to just dive right into it. We'll share our thoughts, get into all the spoilers, all the goodness. And I guess I just kind of want to start by saying that so me and Chris watched it on Thursday night, and we went to a 7:45 screening of it.
Mhm.
And we had originally bought 2 tickets at the same time. The first time we bought it was at 11 because and then we realized, we can get an earlier screening, so let's get that. But we didn't get rid of the old tickets, so we went back to back, and we saw it opening night twice in a row.
That's so
7:45, left around 10:30, and turned right around and went to go watch it again. And it worked
out perfect.
Usually I can't do that with a movie. It's hard for me to watch it back to back like that, but this one we had to. And when we first got out of the first screening of it, I told Chris something like it was good. It was really good. I loved it. It's still not my favorite Spider-Man, but it was amazing. And a part of it kind of felt like, it was all just a dream type of movie. And that's how I felt the first viewing. And then when we came out of the second one, I was like, I was wrong. I was totally wrong. I just couldn't see the clearer picture and what this movie was really about, which I'll share a little later. But I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I can't wait to see it a third time and a fourth time and over. What was your initial reaction?
I mean, honestly, every single thing that I want to happen pretty much happened, except for like a couple things, and we'll get to that. But it's not that I didn't like it, just I was hoping for certain details to happen in a certain way, but it was literally anything a Spider-Man fan could want. And I was saying about like the viewing experience, it was kind of perfect because the 7:40 viewing, we were pretty much the only people cheering and like excited.
Really?
That too.
Yeah, which was really weird. It wasn't like a full house, right?
We were always the first to instigate the cheering. It was so weird.
It was good because we got to hear the dialogue super clearly, every detail we caught. And then the second time, people were cheering because like Dr. Robotnik was on screen. Like, yeah, we know he's here. But then the movie started
for the Sonic trailer.
People cheered for the Sonic trailer.
So
it's
we
the crossover, but not that crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was weird. The second viewing, it was the hardcore fans. So I'm really glad we saw it a second time.
I feel like we still were like instigating it because like we knew what was coming. So we were like riling up, and then we're like... But yeah, the guy like next to me, he was having the time of his life. I'm like, dude, same.
He ruined his pants.
Oh, yeah, it stinky.
My theater experience was so cool. I saw it at the earliest available that was in Oklahoma City. I went to like every theater, and I was like, I'm going to the first screening that's in the city. So I got the 3:30 p.m. on Thursday.
Oh wow!
And which is 1:30 your time. And so first of all, I was gonna buy 2 tickets, but I was like, no, I want to go to this alone. I want like no disturbance. I don't want to accidentally invite somebody who's going to ask me questions and shit the whole way through.
Yeah.
And so I sat down, and first there was like an older woman and a younger man that were like on either side of me, and I quickly realized that they were together, and I was like, please switch me seats. Please switch me seats.
Oh.
I'm not like doing this like lean over popcorn shit. So
no.
she switched me seats, and then there's somebody in front of me. I was in like the third or fourth row back because I like that mid-level viewing. And there's somebody in front of me on their phone, like towards like the beginning of the movie, that was super distracting. And the woman that sat next to me, she pulled out her phone and she was taking Snapchats to send her friends, presumably.
Oh my God.
The whole time she's asking him questions about what's going on.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and like as a spoiler warning, which you've already done, but like after May died, she fell asleep and started snoring.
Oh my gosh.
And then
That's the worst timing too.
Yeah, and then after Andrew and Toby show up, she wakes up and Tom's on the roof crying, like where he and MJ would hang out. And she comes up and he's, like, May died, and she's like, oh, she died. And I was like, yes.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
That really bugs me. I hate that. There was a person who was on their phone in our first showing, and I almost lost my shit, but they quickly put it away. But I was like, I'm gonna have to cause a scene in here.
Yeah.
I hate when people ruin the movies, especially for things like Star Wars or Endgame or Spider-Man.
And like on
that's
premiere
not cool.
night.
Premiere night. Like, why are you there? Why are
It's
you
kinda
there?
like the
So that I
Turtle
can
Flash
beat you with a
movie.
baseball bat.
Yeah, that's. Well, aside from that, what was your first
Yeah.
experiences once you walked out of the theater?
Dude, I was emotional to the film. My first assessment, like I was kind of like, the pacing is a little odd in this movie. And then I started to appreciate it. What I realized, and I was just telling a friend about this, I thought, this is an odd movie. Like I intimately know every character in this movie, and that was kind of a nice thing. Like it had the Spider-Man 3 element of so many villains, but I didn't need to know anything else about them. That was what sort of distinguished it there. So I was like, okay, I know everybody in this movie. There's not a lot of expository that has to come out of this whole experience of connecting with these villains, because I am connected with them. So I got over the pacing thing really quickly. And then, there was just so much candy for longtime fans, and Spider-Man's always been my favorite superhero. So like the very special movie for me. And I was never partial to the Garfield movies. I was partial to Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, but I think the writing was just terrible for what he got. He made a good Peter Parker. They all have different elements that I love about Peter Parker. And Andrew, I think, had the awkward, kid down almost as well as Toby, but in a different way that was more convincing. Yeah. And so it made me appreciate his films more in hindsight. I love Tobey Maguire. I mean, that was the first superhero movie I ever saw. So like, I just loved it. I loved the dynamic between the three of them. I thought there was a lot of like plot fodder that bothers me a little bit in hindsight. Just like Toby thinking like, I've thought about, curing Norman Osborn in hindsight a lot since, and then just makes this anti-serum, and they do it in a high school chemistry lab.
Right.
And it's like, well, where does all this come from? I loved, there was some stuff that was just like, oh, okay, that's just plugged in for development, and you're not supposed to ask too many questions because it's a movie. But it's kind of, it's kind of like the same questions people ask about, like, why was Vice Admiral Holdo able to like bang through a First Order ship using hyperspace, and Han Solo was able to jump through one?
Yeah.
I had some issues with like plot issues too, or some plot holes, narrative things that didn't make sense to me, but not as much as when I normally walk out of a Spider-Man film. I think the biggest one for me was just explanation on why the three Spider-Man were all there, because we knew why the villains were there. And then the one problem I have with this movie is the ending, and how when Peter said, let's make everyone forget who I am, and before he was just trying to make them all forget he was Spider-Man. At the end he said, well, let's make them forget that I'm Spider-Man. And they actually took away everyone's memory of Peter Parker in general. It wiped his existence from the world.
Yeah.
Because Happy should have still known who he was.
As Aunt May's nephew, yeah.
Yeah, and then MJ should have still known him as a classmate, but she didn't even know him as a classmate. So it's like,
how does he just exist in this world?
Is all his birth certificate gone too? Like, is he a brand new person? Is he even Peter Parker anymore? That's what was. Right. I'm sure they'll explore it going forward because they're definitely doing a fourth one. But I was very confused at the ending. But needless to say, it was wrapped up really nicely, and it was something. I was really nervous going to this movie. Like, how are they gonna end it? How are they gonna write this? It was very ambitious. Yeah. And there's so much to talk about in this movie. It's gonna be hard to keep this in an hour. But I kind of want to start with you with like some things that were speaking on the villains anyway. For a villain's point of view on this movie, like how did you feel about them, how they were addressed, how they were brought in, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's very interesting the choice of villains who came through and all of that, because Electro's there, but like Green Goblin for Amazing Spider-Man isn't, and people were talking about like, oh, but did he then get killed by Andrew Garfield? I'm like, I don't think so. It's just the villains who came through slipped through the cracks. It was just the people who managed to get through, and also it's kind of like a redemption for Jamie Foxx's character, because poor guy. But it was very interesting. I love how the plot of this movie was like rehabilitation and helping out the villains and addressing what made them that way, and trying to make sure that they have a better life, pretty much. Like cure Norman Osborn of his like schizophrenic, like dual personality, like darkness, and Doc Ock, his whole like machinery like fried his brain basically, but he is a good guy. He's just very ambitious, and it got control of him literally. You have Electro who just wasn't being seen, and then he completely just Sandman, I guess he just felt betrayed and like nothing really got resolved, but none of them were like bad except for like the Green Goblin personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
At least for like the characters that they chose, it makes sense why they would also contribute and help him. But then also, like, for example, Max, he's like, well, I like the power. I've never been seen and like respected by anyone. I kind of want to keep this, and it makes sense. Like,
there was his whole motivation back in Amazing Spider-Man too. He's like, oh, suddenly I'm not invisible anymore. Like people, like I matter. Yeah. And it just goes deeper here. I agree with you. I think the villains were so. It probably was like availability and willingness, but making Goblin the main bad, I think, in this was incredible. Willem Dafoe just shredded it. Like
he was incredible.
Look at him,
so good. And I have to wonder, like, how much of he was actually Norman at all, like how he was like just kind of like plotting this mastermind thing like the whole way through.
Because it kind of could have been like a second place thing, and he's just like in the background looking at the world, and Green Goblin's in control, but he's like really good at like posing as him. But I feel like some moments it was really Norman, at least like when he's talking with Aunt May, and at the end, of course, like it's very tough to know, and that's how you realize how good of an actor Willem Dafoe is. It could have gone either way. Somebody was joking, like, what if he got an Oscar nom for this and not The Lighthouse? And I'm like, it could happen. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's like it reminded me a lot of like, at the when Toby at the end of the original Spider-Man, like kind of nuts up and starts beating his ass finally, and he gets him against the wall, and he's like, Peter, it's me. And then he's, I'm not going to kill you. Godspeed, Spider-Man. And
Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say Willem Dafoe stole some of the scenes for me. Like, totally stole this movie. He never put this character down.
No.
Like, he's probably been waiting for the call since 2006 or whatever his last appearance was. And it felt so good. And what was interesting was, if you look at the original Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy, Green Goblin the Willem Dafoe's portrayal of him is very campy. It's very like I'm coming for you. Like, it's like we don't really see that in movies today.
Right.
But he was able, and it wouldn't, you would think it wouldn't work in like today's Spider-Man movies, but it worked. He changed it a little bit and he made it like a little bit more menacing. That
Yeah, it's
part
like
where he's getting
sinister.
beat in the face and he's just
Oh, he's just
smiling.
smiling and
Right.
laughing.
He's
So
like
cool.
maniacally just like
Yeah.
enjoying it.
And that
It
brought
fuels his like.
Yeah, right. That brought me back to the my favorite scene in Homecoming, which is when the Vulture is sitting in the car with Pete before he lets him take his daughter to Homecoming, the dance. And he's just like in that car threatening him like, this is the last time you're going to see her. You know, this is it, like you're done being Spider-Man. And John Watts, full credit to him for pulling this whole trilogy off. Absolutely amazing. But he really knows how to give us those really those good villain moments. And I thought Willem Dafoe, he was amazing.
It was a role
Others
he was
were
meant
too,
to
but
play. Like,
yeah, it was, and the power of all these villains, they showed how really powerful they are. They were all OP.
right.
Like Doc Ock was going to kill Spider-Man.
Right.
Face
He
it.
was fully prepared.
Willem Dafoe, the ultimate villain in this, like you said, Zach, just totally powerful, and
Oh yeah.
that they were all really powerful in this. They showed their capabilities, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I loved how, and I noticed, kind of this thing that was sort of a parallelism between Tobey Spider-Man and Tom Spider-Man was the extent to which like it's the rage within them that gives them the capacity. Like they have to meet Goblin at his level in order to have any chance of like beating his ass. Like at the end when Tom like gets in front of him again and they're on the shield next to the water. Yeah, this scene. And it's like Tom just like lets loose, and you've never seen him fight like this. Like he is beating ass, and it isn't. I noticed a split in me. Like I wanted him to kill Goblin, but and then I was so caught by the tenderness of Tobey Maguire, like catching the glider and stopping it from happening, knowing what had transpired. I love how this is cycling here. And like just this like look in his eyes. He's like, I've been here. I've seen this. I've done this. Like this is not the answer. And it's so interesting because as the viewer, like I loved Marissa Tomei's Aunt May. I loved her, and I thought. So actually, as a quick aside, and maybe I got really spoiled out for this movie. I don't know about you two. But
no.
There was just some stuff that got dropped in my lap that I wish hadn't. But what caught me off guard was I thought that they retconned her death. I knew she was going to die before I went into the movie, and I thought it was they don't have an Uncle Ben to kill in this universe, but they do Aunt May instead.
Yeah.
And when she got up and she seemed fine at first, I was like, oh my God, like she didn't get hit by the grenade. Like we're good. And then when she like is like, I just need to rest my eyes and the blood, I was like, oh, it's happening. She's dying and it's real. And so they still managed to make it like, maybe this isn't going to happen for me in my head. And I was spoiled that it was going to happen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, that scene got me.
Oh, my brother got that one spoiled.
Oh, he did?
Sucks.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
He told me until after he saw it. I was like, yep, that's what I was told. I'm like,
oh, man.
I'm so sorry.
I was glad they did it the way they did it because I was still suspended in disbelief that like, oh, like she made it out of this. Like either this is not where she dies, and then she goes, and I was like, oh my God.
It's like a double fake out.
Yeah.
It was. That kind of ties into what I think the movie was about for me, but I want to mention you talked about how Tobey stops the glider from penetrating through Goblin, and I just wanted to mention how brilliant the performances were from all three Spider-Mans, because they don't say anything in the scene, but he says so much with just his eyes.
Yeah,
and he's pretty much reminded of the time he sought vengeance against the guy that killed his Uncle Ben, and he had that fire in his eyes, and he had that the fighting style that he had never embraced before, like just pure anger. And that was a fantastic scene for me. I really loved it. Just seeing Tobey Maguire in general was amazing because he is my favorite Spider-Man,
Yeah, me
and
too.
it's just it's simply just because it was my first superhero movie I saw as a kid, and it just meant so much to me. But yeah, we'll get into that in a second. But with Aunt May, I did want to mention when I said about after my first viewing, it felt like it was all kind of a dream moment. And the second time I was like, I got it, I figured it out. So this movie is really just surrounding the ideals of Aunt May and her theme of hope and hope for the villains. And they meant all the villains mention her in some way. Like Green Goblin is even just like, you trusted her, you thought she
Like
could,
her ways.
yeah, her ways or whatever. And
Like you've been soft or
the first time I was watching it, I was like, I don't really understand what they're talking about here. But they were all talking about May. And if it wasn't for May, obviously all the Spider-Men wouldn't have had something to have empathy towards each other for, but also none of the villains would have been redeemed.
Yeah.
And May is the heartbeat of this last movie. And I thought it was fantastic. And if there's one thing I didn't like about May, it's just she broke up with Happy. That was it. That was so sad.
But oh my god, the whole thing where it's on May's quote to say, "With great power comes great responsibility." Like,
and then
it's so beautiful.
Fills it out. Yeah.
Yeah, and
that
they
both
great. Like talk about how that's like what they learned and that's like their whole philosophy. Like it makes sense. Like I mean, of course, like they all had that, but they have to like stand by it and keep themselves in check, and that's why they're like, hey. I know that you're feeling all these things, but you can't give yourself into rage because that's why these people are villains, because they are giving themselves into the temptation of being violent and aggressive and not purely defending people and the greater good. It's just like being selfish and giving into your like desires of getting revenge.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I think it was so neat to have this sense of like, I love how they just approach Tom with this like this understanding and love, like when they meet him on the roof.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, like, you guys got to get out of here. Like, like I've ruined everything. And they're like, dude, like, we've been there.
We get it.
Like, like Tobey understands the helplessness of not being able to save his friend's dad and his best friend dying in his arm. He even mentions it, like, you know, I had a best friend who died in my arms after he tried to kill me. The delivery on that was incredible too. And
he's just like, yeah, it was pretty sad.
Yeah, and Andrew knows that, and it was cool that I think we got like a lot of closure for both of these people. Andrew gets to save MJ, which is the moment I bawled. Yes. Like I lost it. Like when I saw his face. Just seeing him save MJ and her going, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "Yeah."
It's like, "Are you?"
Probably more okay than he's ever been.
Yeah.
and
save his
Tobey getting to save Goblin, you know, and it was cool, you know. And I mentioned this as something that bothered me a little bit earlier. Like, there's a lot of that plot fodder where he was like, "I've been thinking about, you know, how I could have saved Norman in the past," and when I think about it in hindsight, this is the root of so much pain for Tobey, is that like it caused this rift between him and Harry. It caused, you know, well, he respected Norman Osborn. Like meeting him at the school was a huge deal for him. And then it ends up being this villain that he has to face, and he feels responsible for his death. And then he jumps in front and he saves Norman Osborn from getting killed, and then ultimately, you know, saves him, you know, from the Goblin. And it's dubious to me that they'll reopen the series with Tobey and that they'll reopen the series with Andrew Garfield, of course. Yeah, I doubt we'll see it more, but I like that it kind of leaves us wondering, what is the world like back in their world now that Norman Osborn is back and alive? What is it like for Harry? And I think that, like, you know, Andrew still kind of gets the shit end of the stick as he goes back and his girlfriend's still dead. And, you know, he's still got this adversarial relationship with his villains were inconsequential. We got Lizard and Electro. And none of those, you know, Kirk Connor's getting saved. I mean, he didn't die in the first place.
Right.
I like how Lizard throughout this whole movie is just vibing. He's like,
He's just like,
Yeah.
I can
I
make
don't
you
care
a
if I die or
lizard.
if I live,
Do you want
whatever.
a takeover? Hey.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna chill in the van, guys.
he's just
Yeah.
chilling. What was he doing in that van?
Oh. I'm kidding.
Why was it shaking when he was?
Oh my.
Anyway, there's. I wanted to mention you were talking about their scene on the rooftop, and I want to comment on that and kind of transition into how all the Spider-Man were introduced and how that was played out on screen. But for the rooftop scene specifically, when all three of them meet for the first time, I was a little worried. I was like, oh man, it's so great to have Andrew and Toby here. What if they steal the show? You know, what if? But they really did a really good job of making the audience know, like, no, this is Tom's Spider-Man movie. This isn't theirs. And the way he like kind of shuts up Toby and Andrew, like, no, I'm gonna send you guys back. Don't say anything. You know, this is my life. Get back to yours. I was like, wow, they're really. A part of me was like, don't you dare shut up, Toby. Don't you dare shut up that Spider-Man. And then also part of me was like, wow, they're really making us know this is Tom Holland's movie, not their movie. Whereas in some ways it still is a Spider-Man 4 and an Amazing Spider-Man 3 epilogue type thing. But I thought they did a good job of that. So what about for you? When their introductions, bringing them in, how did you think it was executed?
I loved it. I just seeing how Ned was trying to be like, hey, show me Peter. I want to see Peter Parker. Like, don't just say like my friend or whatever. But he's like, Peter Parker. I was like, dude, you do know what you're saying is so general. You don't think it is, but it really is, because they do it twice and they get different dudes and they're like, what is this? But oh my God, I think that it was done perfectly. The only way it could have been better is if like Toby had said like, oh, pizza time, or I had to be an old lady with a stick, or did like little like dancey dance. But oh my God, he comes in here dressed as Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban. I just
Yes, he does.
cool youth pastor. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's the boys. They're here. And when they see each other, they don't just do the easy like point meme, which would have been also amazing. I think it did happen for like a split second, but they just do. I think it's a Spider-Man game move. I think that's where they put it in. And it's like the when they go like down at the same time.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because it's way too specific. I think that's the part that they took from the games, because there
Where
was
they
like
fight?
a reference when they're in the apartment and they like shoot at each other and then go.
Yes,
and they do like a flip.
I love that part.
So cool.
I love Toby like catching Andrew's.
Yeah,
like he stopped his shooter. That was cool.
Oh my God. I love how all the Spider-Men play off each other and they're like bonding over different things and talking about, oh, who have you fought? Oh my God, my back hurts. Can you crack it for me? Or like encouraging each other. It's just really wholesome. And like, I just want them to all be friends and hang out. I love Spider-Verse so much. So this was basically like that, but for the characters we have already known. And it was just so beautiful. I'm just like, they're all friends and I love them and I want to hang out with all of them.
And all those moments where they're just talking,
yeah,
it didn't feel scripted. It almost felt improvised. Like they were just hanging out and talking,
yeah.
which it may have all been scripted. It may have been improv. I don't know, but it felt like the most genuine scene in the film when they're And you had mentioned before we started how it was kind of like the three siblings, the oldest sibling who's like telling everyone like, you know, hey, be good to yourself. You're amazing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The middle sibling who's kind of chaotic and crazy. And then the little one who's just like you know, hey guys,
help me out. Like,
yeah. And
I feel like Andrew Garfield also is like a lot of like imposter syndrome, because he is really great. But the thing is, he keeps putting himself down and he's like, oh, but you guys are better. And like the small one has also been in space now. And like the big one, like
good example.
Like there's so many things and he just keeps putting himself down because he wants to live up to the things. And he's kind of commenting on how the fan reception of his movies were, because there was a lot of unwarranted hate. I feel like he's a great Spider-Man. People have had a lot to say and now they're changing their mind because of this. And I mean, fair. At the same time, you should have known. I know Toby is great. At the same time, doesn't mean you have to put other people down.
I was a part of that. You know, I was so attached to Tobey Maguire. And then when they announced they were doing a new one, I was like, no. And then when they said it was Andrew, I was like, he's too cool to be Peter Parker.
The thing is, Spider-Man is cool.
He is cool. And
he's a great Spider-Man. But Peter Parker, I get. It's like, we're used to him being like nerdy in the movies and like way too awkward. And he has that awkward thing, but he's more like, at the time it was like the rise of like the hipster cool but like also nerdy thing, so it kind of made sense. At the same time, it feels like a way just like huge shift from Tobey's like nerd.
I think each Spider-Man has caught, and Tom is, I think, is just a very different story because of his integration into the Avengers and how we got his introduction. But Tobey and Andrew are both so, like, they both capture one element of Peter Parker very well. Like, Andrew catches the genius of him so well. Like, they really hype up like his book smarts and like his ability to do calculations and things like that.
Yeah.
And he gets that really special tutelage from Kurt Connors, before the lizard entrance. Which I wondered if they were going to do that with the original, the Tobey thing. But anyway, not to sort of go non sequitur, but it was really interesting, because Tobey was kind of geeky and shy, but Andrew, like you said, was so cool. He was a genius, but he kind of like, he wasn't so awkward nerd. He was like,
he's like artsy. He skateboards. He has a pretty girlfriend. Like,
yeah, exactly. And Tobey got like, it was funny because MJ was always kind of like the girl he couldn't get until she was aware he was Spider-Man.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is also funny how when Doctor Strange is making the spell and he's like, oh no, but she is my girlfriend. And what if she doesn't know that I'm Spider-Man? It's like, well, was she your girlfriend because you're Spider-Man? He's like, well, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. Like, there's like a slight remnant of that, if any, just like passing reference, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of,
I have sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have a theory, by the way, and I don't mean to go too deep, but here I have this.
Let's hear it.
So I was really interested in the fact that when in the sequence where he goes to visit the Sanctum Sanctorum, and he asks Doctor Strange to help him, and Doctor Strange mentions this thing to Wong. It's so different from what we got in the trailer, because Wong does not say, do not cast that spell and then step through the portal.
Right.
He does not say that. He goes through
and says, like, don't involve me.
Just, leave me out of this. And then in the second post-credit scene, which is really just an extended trailer for Multiverse of Madness, that dialogue comes back. And so I have this theory, this lingering suspicion after seeing that there is a universe in which, or like a part of the multiverse, in which Doctor Strange did it against Wong's wishes. And he's torn apart the multiverse just the same as he did with Peter. And he is now having to face his crimes, because at the end of casting the spell, in the universe that we witnessed, he doesn't know who Peter is, but he's being taken to trial.
Right.
He's being taken to trial by people in the multiverse, or that I guess probably like some Grand Council of Wizards or something, and they're going like, like, you're going to pay for your crimes. And I suspect that Mephisto is this kind of bad Doctor Strange that we see, and there may be some out there that think that it was cut or reshot, but I honestly suspect that because we're seeing that dialogue again, that has something to do with it, because I cannot imagine that Doctor Strange would be like, what I did what, like, as far as I know, like, it's like put together and there's no Peter Parker to speak of, but he's going, I didn't mean for this to happen, I didn't want for this to happen. So he knows what he did wrong, and he's being taken to task over it.
He said the M word. I'm kidding.
Wait, what?
Mephisto.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
I love that theory. And when you texted me that yesterday, I was like, I had no idea. And I immediately texted Chris. I was like, Zach has a theory.
And the thing is, I mean, the multiverse exists, so that theory is technically canon in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's not what ends up happening in the movies that we watch, like, it's probably canon in one of the universes. It makes sense.
And kind of, off topic too, but Multiverse of Madness, I'm really looking forward to, especially with Sam Raimi directing. And it is also confirmed Spider-Man is making his appearance in that movie too. So it obviously is probably connected to No Way Home in some way.
Mhm.
But I also wanted to mention the Doctor Strange stuff in this movie, especially the scene where he takes him in the mirror dimension, was some of the best
So good.
Marvel
Wow.
graphics I've seen in a movie so far. Better than the first Doctor Strange.
Oh,
It was
yeah, and that's already like
yeah, and it was like, I'm so glad we're seeing this in a theater. Like
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I
it's
hope
like
it would have been not nearly enough of like a spectacle.
yeah, and the sound design in it too was
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, they
It-
nailed that. They nailed
Mhm.
that.
And then Spidey taking like his math thing to here.
Oh,
and,
that
like,
was cute. That
to
was
beat
cute.
him up. The thing is also like what you mentioned. I mean, not only them showing like his little like spider tingle.
I
like,
love that
spidey
they call it
sense,
the tingle.
right?
Yeah,
Are your
I have the
tingles
tingle
tingling?
too. I have the tingle too.
I mean, it makes sense. His spider senses are tingling, so like they
Yeah.
brought it back because I feel like people used to think it sounded so stupid. I'm like, but that's what it's called. I mean, you don't tell
Yeah.
Hulk not to smash.
Yeah, right. What? So I have to ask you both. What do you think in terms of like with Peter being in such he seems optimistic, but he's in a sad way. I mean, there's no Spider-Man film that's ended with Spider-Man being so destitute and in such a
Yeah.
like he's in a spot where he literally has nobody. He doesn't have an Aunt May or an Uncle Ben. He doesn't have
Yeah.
anybody to call friends. He's broke. He's got this
Mm.
apartment, which is reminiscent of Tobey's apartment after he moves out in Spider-Man 3, and you'll get your rent when you fix this
Oh
damn
my God,
door.
I was gonna ask like if it is it the same one because like I wish I could like tell, but it feels like it
Yeah.
is,
It looked
right?
like
It kind of felt that way, and I wondered. The door seemed to work, so it would have been funny if
Yeah.
it was like he turned around and shut it, and it just like
And it, like-
opened.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you: do you think that part of his appearance in Multiverse of Madness, or part of what's going to go on since they've now confirmed a fourth Spider-Man movie, is are they going to fix this? Are they going to rectify this for him, or is he going to be sort of this lone wolf character? I kind of have this speculation, and I went on a great date last night.
Oh,
And
congrats.
she had thank you. And she had she literally watched the movie and then came to our date,
Nice.
and she was like, she loved it, and she said, I think that they're going to fix this for Peter.
Yeah. I mean, it's a smart way to like I love MJ and like his friendship with Ned too, but like it would make sense if they're trying to bring Gwen Stacy in or they're trying to bring like Felicia or something. Like that's how you can do it. Like that way he won't be cheating or doing anything crazy and breaking up with someone just to get a new girlfriend. They can do that. And if they wanted to bring in Harry Osborn, they could, even though like they kind of confirmed that he doesn't exist in this universe or something happened to him.
Yeah.
That's like implied. But I mean, that's kind of how they could manage making a new plot point. I do think that he has to get like a new support group because it's just so, especially being so young. Like he's still a kid.
Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
and for me, going into Multiverse of Madness or addressing Peter Parker after this film, I think what is key and what was not explained in this movie and has to be addressed is the very important and very quick scene when Doctor Strange pushes him into his astral projection.
Oh, and then
And
he just
Yes, he
crawls
comes
back in.
Not
He
only can
controls
he
his
crawl
body.
in, but his spider sense is so keen he can still move it when
That's
he's
so
outside of his own
crazy.
body. So I
Yeah.
think this definitely has something to do that will be addressed in Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
And it also was like immediately when that scene happened, I think I told you, I was like,
Like
how
how?
can he do that?
Right.
That's amazing. And I think that's going to be a big question that'll be answered
Mhm.
coming soon. But for Peter alone,
Mhm.
how does he get back into the know with everybody?
Right.
That's such a big question. And I think it's one great sign of writing because
Mhm.
I think they have a plan made already. I really do. Because
Well, the
I think-
symbiote's in the MCU now.
Right. That too.
and I think what Marvel has been doing for a lot is Kevin Feige tells his writers, write yourself into a corner
Mhm.
and then let's come up with the
Craziest.
craziest way to get out of that corner because we can do anything.
Yeah.
And they proved it with this movie, right?
Yeah.
The whole time, the first 40 minutes before Andrew and Toby show up, I'm like, if they come in this movie, because I was still a little like,
Unsure.
it still could not happen.
Mhm.
I was like, how do they do it?
Right.
but they do it, and I think they have a plan for what they're going to do. I don't know what it could be, because watching this movie alone, as the movie's unfolding, I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I'm so in the dark. Like, the spot that got me the most, like, where is this film going, is right when he captured all the villains and he locked Doctor Strange in that dimension, and then he was like, okay, let's work out what you guys are how you're gonna get home. And I was like, how is this movie gonna unfold? I was That's probably another reason why I love this movie, because they gave us nothing in the marketing, which I loved.
They also close off the book of Ned having the capacity that he's such a natural, gifted magic user, which again seemed like a plot movement thing.
Like it could really just be anything, kind of like a, because he's not based on anyone, is he? I don't think he has like a comic.
I think he's brand new.
He is a character in the Miles Morales comics.
Got it.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah.
So he is Miles Morales. I mean, he's doesn't he have a? I am not in the camp of thinking that the Into the Spider-Verse is a very great movie. I know a lot of people loved it. You
can't say that in front of me.
Okay, I'll say this. I won't say it again. I'll just I thought it's very enjoyable. Very, very good Spider-Man movie. But it was to me, it was very campy, and it was very much a kid's movie. And I enjoyed it for what it was. And also I have all of the Miles Morales comics, and I love them. Ned is Miles Morales' best friend in those comics.
Also, that's like Miles Morales reference. I'm hoping maybe that can be a plot in the new Spider-Man music and not movies, because Miles Morales exists in the MCU. We just haven't seen him. We've seen his graffiti and we've seen his uncle Donald Glover. So like, maybe we can get Miles Morales, and it can be kind of like the Spider-Man games where he's like, because they made him look like Tom Holland now, the Spider-Man from the video games. So like, he can be the mentor and just have Miles Morales be another Spider-Man. It would make sense. It's not like they can't do it.
Speaking of Into the Spider-Verse, the animated, I was watching a bunch of interviews with Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige, both the producers of No Way Home, and Amy Pascal has produced every Spider-Man movie since 2001, and she had some interesting things to say about Into the Spider-Verse when she was asked about that project. And it was actually Phil Lord and is it Tim Miller? Chris Miller. It was actually their idea to bring in Andrew and Toby into the Spider-Man coming together, and they actually wanted to do that into the Spider-Verse, and they were already sketched out, and they were going to be in there, they were going to voice it, and then because they have to make it to be able to pitch it, so it wasn't official, but they pitched it art. So they pitched it to Amy Pascal, and she had said it's too early for that, but she said hold on to it,
because they had this planned out, right? Basically,
at that time she had already talked with Kevin about it. So I think there's still a possibility to see Toby and Andrew in animated form, because
two movies
there's 2 more Into the Spider-Verse movies coming out. But I just think that was some interesting background on that. Yeah, go ahead. And let's see if we can get out of here. Go ahead. Sorry. So one thing I wanted to mention too was talking about, since we're kind of talking about Ned a little bit, was Peter Parker's relationship with both Ned and MJ, because I think they were really highlighted in this film more so than the other previous installments, and especially MJ. So for me, when MJ was first introduced in Homecoming, I really loved her sarcastic humor, her kind of attitude, or snarky comments and things, and I thought she was hilarious and fun, and I was so glad she was going to be MJ in Far From Home. Far From Home came out, I think it was a drastic change in her character. I wasn't a fan. I love her chemistry with Tom Holland.
Oh, really? Because I don't see it a lot. The dialogue between them, like it's somewhat there.
The chemistry?
Yeah, I not for me, I guess.
So I felt it in the third one more, but I didn't like MJ in part 2, and I was really nervous going into No Way Home. because I was like, I really don't like what they've done with this character. But I really felt like they brought back her original type of character in No Way Home. And I thought Zendaya did a great job too. I really loved some of the moments she had. And especially for Ned too, that I was kind of nervous they'd push him aside like they did in Far From Home.
They really felt like main characters in this movie.
They did, yeah. I was glad it was emphasizing that great moment when Andrew and Toby were like, well, I've never worked as a team. And Tom is just like, well, I know how to be in a team. And just kind of rounding out everyone's story in a little way like that, which was really cool.
Yeah. I loved that to that moment when he was like, I didn't want to like make this a big deal, but I'm an Avenger. And they were like, that's great. What's that?
Right. I love that too. That was so great. When he was like, I'm an Avenger. Oh, what's that?
Oh, are you in a band?
That's phenomenal. Like, but what is that?
It was so cute. Because it makes sense. Like, all of them work on their own. Like, they don't know what the hell an Avenger is. They don't even know what anyone else is.
And I think it's interesting that Tom has to now go, like, he has this moment of, I've worked in a team for a lot of this stuff, except for like the last movie, there's some Nick Fury and things going on, but like he really had to, he's now moving into a space where he is very much alone. And I mean, one easy resolve for that, to me, if they don't go in the direction of fixing things and making people aware of Peter Parker again and not having him live this depressing, lonely existence, is he could just go to the Avengers and be like, hi, look, I can shoot webs out of my hands and I can beat all of you up. I'm strong.
Nobody's forgotten who Spider-Man is, because everything still happened. So I mean, I'm sure the Avengers, and I mean, Happy knows about him, and I'm sure there was still like the Iron Man like connection and all of that. So I mean, he might still be able to like not have to reintroduce himself. It's just like his personal life is kind of gone and a blank slate.
Yeah, the only way I see that to like really explain it is like everything happened as it always did, but people's memory has just been wiped of him. So like they have this sense of Spider-Man, but they don't have a memory of any interaction with Peter Parker. So like now that May's dead, Happy always remembers like being around May and dating her, and he remembers like working with Spider-Man, but he doesn't recall Peter Parker being her nephew, being like, living with her and stuff. But it's just so that's such a crazy sell to me.
I want to ask you both about your favorite moment in this, and also one moment that you thought was the funniest to you. While you think about it, I want to address some people in the chat, which I will be deactivating after this video because there is some spicy material in here for some reason.
If you see me looking away, it's because I'm deleting the comments.
Oh,
thank you so much.
Oh God.
So
I'm on it too.
I just want to welcome if anyone's watching live, and if you're watching this on the playback, you can leave your comments below. I'll respond to everybody. But DarkSage91,
I see some stuff coming on Twitch.
Okay, cool. DarkSage9117 has an unpopular opinion that they wanted to share. So I have not screened this, so let's find out. I did not like this movie. As an avid reader of Marvel Comics, this is not Spider-Man. This is not what he is. I personally think they should follow as close to the comics as possible and only change things if absolutely needed. He goes on and says, I may be in the minority and I understand the need to appeal to a larger audience, but I feel personally this movie is not what Spider-Man is or about. Unless they have a viable reason to change or tweak a story or movie, leave it alone. But that is just my 2 cents. I was not a fan, and I think this was a terrible Marvel movie because of the direction they went. The one thing I question about what you're saying here, Darksage, is did you like the previous 2? I think I need a little bit more context. Are you not a fan of like all the Marvel films, or was it like just this one didn't work for you? So if you want to give me some more context on that, but hey, I don't think you are alone. I think there are some people out there who don't like this movie, and I don't like some Marvel films.
I mean, Black Widow was not very good to me. I take issue with I don't mean to denigrate you in any way, Darksage, but I hear this a lot. This idea of we need to be faithful to the comics, and so like to be fair to like most of like comic book heroes is that, to be quite frank with you, comic book heroes were really just not fucking cool before cinematic world got to them. Like they really like comics. It's not a niche thing. Of course, there's a lot of consumers of comics, but if you look data wise, and I don't have any data in front of me, but Iron Man was not as cool as Iron Man has ever been until Tony Stark took him to the screen.
Yeah,
that's true.
And there's so much stuff in the movies that I don't want to see comics replicated. Comics are
they're their own thing.
Yeah, they epitomize camp too. Like there's comic book panels it's so much like no burying the lead, and they frankly it can be kind of lame. There's always been sort of like censorship to comics. I love comics and don't like I have boxes full of them, and I used to collect particularly Star Wars stuff, but they're so campy and they're so, I mean, there's so much more freedom to move around and bury plot details inside of movies, and they should be their own thing. They should sort of experiment and move on to, exploring things that you can't explore in comic books.
Another thing is that comics aren't even faithful to the other previous comics. There's so many different runs and versions of the characters, different stories.
That is true.
There's so much to explore, and the MCU movies and Sony movies and like whatever movies, like all the superhero adaptations, most of them are just a different version of the character, a new story to tell. Yes, they borrow from the comics, and there's a lot of like Easter eggs and references, but that's just to keep the fans involved and be like, oh my God, it's just like that one thing, but they're doing it this way. Let's see how this turns out. I don't think it's not like it's a novel where there's like a specific lore always. There's, oh my God, kitty. Sorry.
This is Teddy.
Sorry. Hi, Teddy.
Oh, bye, kid.
Bye, Teddy.
I got another one here.
But I feel like there's a lot of room for creative liberties and making new versions of characters, because there's not one set. Yes, Spider-Man does have to be bitten by a spider. Yes, Spider-Man is mostly called Peter Parker, even though anyone can wear the mask. But that's like the whole point of Spider-Man too. Like, just because this is not the same Peter Parker that we've seen before doesn't make him not Spider-Man, which is the whole point of Spider-Man. That anybody can be that and represent that responsibility and the power, and just wanting to do good, being a friendly neighborhood superhero.
Yeah. But hey, Dark Sage, thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Yes, thank you.
And who knows, maybe you will get that Marvel movie you're looking for someday. I've never read a Spider-Man comic, so it's hard for me to speak on this. The only one I've actually flipped through is the Miles Morales one, surprisingly. When that first came out, I was kind of shocked by the cover. I was like, a black Spider-Man, interesting. And then the movie came out, I was like, oh, cool. But still, I've never read one. So,
and now
thanks for.
Now that I think about it, I said that Ned is his best friend in Miles Morales, but his name is actually his name is like Genki. I don't know how to. Genki Lee, but he looks like Ned.
What a name!
Yeah,
what a name.
Was it with an A or an E?
Ganke.
Oh, Gank. Got it.
Yeah.
Because I thought you were saying Genki, like happy and like Japanese. I'm like, that's kind of weird. He's Happy Hogan and
yeah.
I'll take one more comment here from Twitch, and then we'll get into our last thoughts. This is from Wretched Eel. Says, I'm more interested in knowing if Venom retained the knowledge of the broader MCU universe. Nothing indicated he forgot about Thor, Hulk, etc. So what do you think?
Well, to be fair, that scene was within the MCU, and it was before he got sucked back into his world. So that's why he was learning about all the Avengers and everything that happened. I don't know if he's going to retain any of that information, because the spell was specific about forgetting about that specific Spider-Man and Peter Parker being linked, but who knows? But it is exciting that the symbiote is in the MCU now.
And is he Venom? Is he just like an offshoot of Venom?
I mean, I think it's kind of like how Venom became a part of Carnage, and that's how he was born, but it's a whole separate entity. Yeah. Because I do love the Symbrock that is from the Venom movies. I think like I do enjoy them as an anti-hero good guy, like with good intentions, but being complete chaotic mess.
Yeah.
I love that dynamic of like wanting to do good, but also like I have to eat people to survive. Like I think it's just so fun. Their dynamic is amazing. They're just dumb fun.
And as much as I was looking forward to seeing Venom in the actual movie, not just a post-credit scene, I loved that he was just sitting at a
Yeah.
bar the whole time
It
getting
makes
drunk.
sense for his character.
It totally
He
does.
would just be like, yeah, you know, whatever. I'm gonna find him, but honestly, I've got to get drunk first.
I
Right.
loved it. Venom's so great.
So good. And then he just gets sucked back like he couldn't do anything. But I mean, there's like a little bit that could happen, leaving the door open for Venom to actually be a villain this time.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah,
could not
yeah.
I could not stand the fact that yes, oh my god, it was so exciting he was gonna be in Far From No Way Home, but I didn't want him to be a villain because I don't this specific
Yeah.
Venom, I'm just like,
What if
this
we
is-
get like our own Tom Holland sort of black suit Spider-Man? That like we get the emo Tom Holland. Jazz. We get Jazz Tom Holland.
Gonna cry?
I love that.
I could see it.
yeah,
I think because we haven't seen Venom yet with the iconic Spider-Man logo on him, so I think he has to absorb him at some point.
right. And also, I mean, we don't know if there's an Eddie Brock in this universe. There could be. There's been
that's
other
true. Yeah, yeah.
characters that have similar names from characters from the comics or other movies, but it hasn't been explored yet. So I don't see why not.
Actually, yeah. What if the symbiote version, the little black goo? What if
Tries to look
he's
for Eddie
looking
Brock.
for that universe as Eddie Brock, and it is
Yeah.
Tom Hardy, and he's like,
right.
and Tom Hardy's like, "What is this?" He's like, "You don't know me, but I know you. Trust me," or something like that. And like then
But
it'll
at the
be
same
like,
time, then it would be unlike unless this like Eddie Brock is like much more like less wanting to be a good person, or if this Venom is like much more detached from like the experiences of Venom the entity. I
and
don't know.
and in the MCU universe, Tom Hardy is still with his wife. Because that's one thing I always wanted to happen in the Venom movies. I'm like, please get back,
Get back
with her.
together.
Please get
Yeah.
back together.
I'm
Power
interested. Yeah, I'm interested too in this idea of the that they have J.K. Simmons in like as an Alex Jones
Yes.
character. I mean, it's so timely.
I
It's
love that.
Actually, I think there are a couple years
I love
behind
this
with
scene of him
that.
in the basement.
Yeah, and then he starts making so
then-
much money. You can see
Right.
that he's all of
He
a sudden in
goes
like
up
this
in the
crazy
world.
studio. Yeah,
I like the Alex
Which is
Jones
basically what
comparison.
happened though.
but
And then him
Spider-Man's
selling
turning
the
the
little
frickin'
supplements, I'm like,
frogs
oh my god, they're going like
I'm Peter Parker. I'm gonna hang you up by your toes and slit your throat politically. I'm gonna.
We need to make a
how-
mashup. Yes.
how far he's fallen.
Yeah, well, it's funny too because like Alex Jones is so out of the dialogue now. To me, there was a little bit of like, I do not want to betray this idea that I like think Alex Jones is cool at all, at all. But
Oh,
that
no.
that was like the wokeism integrated into this movie was to sort of denigrate like a character like Alex Jones and like kind of malign. But
At the same time, it makes sense because the whole character of J. Jonah Jameson and like the Tobey Maguire movies is that
Right.
he's so willing to get like out there story and like headline that he does not care about the truth. He's like, Spider, we don't know if he's good. Maybe he's evil and we don't know about it. I'm gonna run with it because that will sell papers. And
Right,
the equivalent to that is grifters like that who will just make anything up for controversy, even if it's
Right.
actively harmful to people.
Well, think about that. Shows like how relevant this movie is with
Mhm.
like Mysterio was right.
Right, and they
think
have
of our
no
political
sense of
environment
anything,
right
yeah.
now. It's very reminiscent of that, and like all these
That's true.
conspiracies about COVID.
Mm.
It was represented in this movie in like a different way, which I think is subconsciously another reason why I
Yeah.
really connected with it and thought, oh wow, this is
Mhm.
interesting, and like
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the Mysterio people just get out of here,
Mhm.
like so that was interesting too, very relevant to today.
Yeah.
But from you, baby, what was your takeaway? Let's get our last thoughts here, and before we close out, and like I guess favorite scene, overall takeaway.
Mm.
I
Or
guess for a
favorite
overall
moments?
takeaway, I thought it was really cool how basically the previous Spider-Man heroes, Spider-Man, their villains haven't been just the villains themselves, but the mistakes of their mentors, because they all were like authority figures and people that they respected, and seeing how they fell to like their like overambition and like greed for power and money and whatever, maybe not money, but just powerful, and how they also relayed to Tom Holland Spider-Man to not fall to those desires and like wanting just power and revenge, and learning from the mistakes, and when they also learn from their mentors' mistakes just relaying over information. That sounds really dumb.
No,
I feel like I didn't put it down correctly.
I get you, and I think it's also a part of like, this opportunity for them to rectify things.
Yeah,
like
do it right this time.
Better. Yeah.
And for like favorite scene, it's really hard because I really loved pretty much everything about it. I love their interactions, but I forgot when you did the introduction, but when you said I'm Han, I wanted to say, and I'm a bit of a scientist myself. And I forgot, and I literally remember right after I said, and I'm excited. I'm like, well, yeah.
I love that moment.
Yeah, that was such a little, I'm just like, thank you.
Yeah.
And
I wanted them to do the meme with the Spider-Man pointing at each other.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's just the comedy was so good in this, and it was also like so like emotional. It was just every single emotion. I'm just overwhelmed and happy.
How about you, Zach? What's your takeaway?
I thought it was. I'm still trying to really form like coherent sentences around it, but I really felt like it was a matter of, don't stray the path, no matter how dark and destitute things get. It's not, that it is always right to follow, the intuition that you can help or that you can make things better. And just because it doesn't seem to like be working out in the short term doesn't mean it's not going to have, long-term goodness that comes out of it. And I don't think that sounds very cogent as a thought yet, but I'll figure it out. My favorite scene, and mostly because it elicited the most powerful emotional response for me, and surprisingly so, because I didn't realize how I could feel for Andrew Garfield and having the opportunity to save MJ. And feeling like I'm not a failure. I am, and I just bawled. I have not cried at a movie like that, since Good Will Hunting, when he's like, it's not your fault. Yeah, I mean, like I've cried in movies before, but that was like I full on like just lost control of the locomotion in my face.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. Sorry.
Yeah, the whole movie's great. It's hard to pick one single moment. My takeaway from this is just the performances. All the performances were just solid, solid. I mean, aside from Jamie Foxx, I really loved all of the characters in this, and I thought they performed very well. The reason I say that is because I feel like it was a completely different character from the Amazing Spider-Man. Not just his looks, but
still weird.
Yeah, and I just don't like the sup, bro. Like the new. I just don't like that. It wasn't for me.
Hey,
it was out of character.
Spider-Man. Hey, Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean,
and now he's like cool.
I think Zach got frozen.
Oh, he's like. Oh my god!
The
also,
signal might have gone
out. In case he comes back in the meantime, I'm just gonna say we have not mentioned him, but oh my god, Matt Murdock.
Oh right.
Oh, he's back.
Right.
Yay! But oh my god, I was so excited to see him. He's back, and he has the little sunglasses. And the moment that he took the break, and he's like, "How do you do that?" I'm a really good lawyer. I'm like, oh, there he is.
That was cute.
So good. I'm so excited. And with Kinky coming into Hawkeye too, I'm just like, let's go.
And I think my favorite moment, scene, whatever, is just when all three of them are meeting for the first time. Yeah. And it's that emotional moment, and they're all connecting. They're all like realize like I felt like he needed me, and then they find each other, and they all help each other kind of get closure. And that scene was my favorite part. I think if I was the most emotional, it was during that scene, which is, it wasn't a sad moment. It was just a brotherly, fraternal kind of moment that really spoke to me. And that was my favorite part. But overall, this film is fantastic. We're definitely going to see it again.
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
And I mean, at some point, we were supposed to do this show originally with Omar as well, who you guys have not met yet. But at some point, maybe he'll be free and we can talk again.
Maybe he'll see it by then.
Maybe he'll see it by then. But yeah, this was fantastic. And Zach, thanks for joining us. I know there's still a shitload more to talk about, but got to keep it short today. But maybe we can do it again. But tell people where they can find you, and anything else you want to say.
Yeah, man. Hey, likewise. Thanks for having me. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, thank you both for having me. It's always a pleasure to do these chats, and I love Spider-Man, almost as much, if not as much as I love Star Wars. So having the chance to talk about this is really cool for me. And yeah, I mean, this has been great. You can find me on the internet at Zach Valadon on Instagram and Twitter at Vacary Zaladon, and I run a podcast called The Pen, the Sword with Zach Valadon, where I talk with creative people. There's an episode with Yuhan. But yeah, I'm always on the interwebs and down to talk Spider-Mans. I'm down to talk Star Wars, Harry Potter, all of that nonsense. I can't wait to see the movie again. I'm sad I've only seen it once, but I wish after you have a ticket, you could like scan it into Disney Plus or like Stars and just start watching it from home.
That'd be amazing.
It'd be so cool. Like, hey, I did my due diligence. I got you guys box office money. Let's go.
Right.
And for those of you that don't know, like I said, Zach's a guest on the regular podcast, the Star Wars podcast. He's been on a couple episodes. We're trying to do another one about The Last Jedi and have a panel of guests there for that too. But yeah, for you, baby, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me here from time to time on the Han Talks First podcast. When I'm able to come in, I guess, and not just sit on the bed right next to them instead. But I am also on Instagram. I am Race Crispy, and on Twitter I am Mochilord currently. Might change that up, who knows? But yeah. I'll see you around.
And for everyone else, again, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or Stitcher, anywhere podcasts are found, rate, review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Come back next week to hear the Star Wars conversation. The Book of Boba Fett comes out next week. We got a lot to talk about. And like on this video, subscribe. She's eating my face on the little button part there. But yeah, and today there was also another episode of Han Talks First talking about the return of Harrison Ford to Star Wars. So if you're interested, go back and check that out. That dropped earlier this morning. And we will be back as soon as we can. And thank you guys for joining us, and reach out to us, say hello.
Thank you so much.
But until then, remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
And let's go skinny dipping.
That too.
Cure some asses, everybody.
Let's
See ya.
cure that ass. Bye.